Welcome to the Neurogenic Integration Podcast, where we explore the incredible potential of neurogenic tremoring beyond the basics. I'm Alex Green.
And I am Sylvia Song-Shields. Together, we'll be diving into how this natural, innate process can be seen and applied across different professions, healing modalities, and in scientific research.
Whether you're a practitioner, a coach, a therapist, a body worker, or a researcher, this podcast is for you.
Join us as we uncover the science, share experiences, and explore how neurogenic integration is revolutionizing the way we approach stress, trauma, and well-being.
So take a breath, get comfortable, and let's dive in. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Alex Green, and I am so excited to be sitting down this afternoon for me and morning for Gabriel. But my guest is Gabriel Kaszab, and I'm in Boulder, Colorado in the United States as usual. And Gabriel lives in Brisbane, Australia, where he's joining us today. And Gabriel is a fellow TRE practitioner and provider, as well as a Reiki practitioner and some other work that we'll hear more about in his practice. But I came across Gabriel sort of through social media and different, the way that I sort of get to track and observe, different tremorers around the world. And I've come to understand that Gabriel's just kind of has his own unique story of finding his way to neurogenic tremoring well before learning it formally, just some formative experiences in his own life history and his own embodiment path. And that to me is such a cool story. So I asked if I could sit down and interview Gabriel today, just to hear his story about tremoring and what he's doing with it today and how he works with others. So that is the theme of our day. And Gabriel, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, very cool. Well, yeah, I mean, let's just kind of start at the beginning, so to speak. Or we could start anywhere in your timeline, but that's what I'm most curious about is what do you consider the first step of your journey that led you to know more about the body and tremoring and the path that you have been led on?
The really first step, if I am honest, is when I was a child. I would fall into deep states of meditation as a child. They were spontaneous, so I didn't know anything about meditation, or I wasn't chasing it. They would happen. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's what true meditation is. When it just happens, it's a happening. There's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
So those states of meditation would reveal a deeper aspect of reality, of myself, or reality itself. Mm-hmm. And to me, it was totally natural. So I didn't think to talk about it to anyone because I thought everyone knew that.
Right.
So I didn't think to share, and nobody spoke about it like that around me. So then I didn't have someone to go, oh, they are speaking about this, then I'll have a conversation with them. So it's totally a private sort of experience as a child.
Can I ask a little bit about how well? So I'm sure you remember the experiences, the feeling and the experience, but do you remember the context well? It's were you in your room or the garden or at school, or what do you remember the settings in which that would show up sometimes?
All of those settings, actually. So sometimes it would be in the evenings when I would close my eyes. Sometimes it would be in the garden. Something would suddenly struck me. It's wow, there's something else here. In a cinema once, I had this psychedelic experience in a cinema once. So I started, instead of seeing the screen itself, I was just seeing psychedelics everywhere. But it would happen in different situations. And I think in reflection, the only thing I can say is that there would be times when my mind would relax and then something would open up.
I see.
That could be any time, right? Yeah. So the mind would suddenly come to a standstill for whatever reason, and then something would be revealed. And that's, I think, what meditation actually is. It's we're trying very hard now as adults to let go of that thinking mind and to bring it to a still point. But as a child, it was happening naturally. And Maybe it happens for most of us. I don't know. I imagine it happens for most of us, but I've been told that's not the case. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't answer that for people.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So that's one piece of the story, is those early
Yes.
memories. Yeah. Yeah.
And often I was yanked out of these experiences because I was seen to be a daydreamer. And that was not cool, being a daydreamer. So the people around me would yank me out. So it's quite a little bit abrupt, you know.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I think by the age of 9 or 10, with the schooling in Romania was quite intense. And I think, and it was quite harsh because, you know, you had to really effort to get knowledge or to understand things. Whereas for me, that kind of understanding came naturally and it was a lot deeper. Mm-hmm. So in contrast, schooling was actually very abrasive and very, very rigid.
I see.
So I think these moments may be stopped. These types of meditations may be stopped by the age of 9 or 10. And then, you know, the life of, you know, going to school and playing sport sort of started to take shape, forgetting about these, or these things just didn't happen anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess in my 20s, I spent a lot of time studying and building a career and that. But in my mid-20s, I think I started searching for that again, without knowing what I was doing. I didn't know that that's what I was searching for, but I was looking at things like, I ended up doing salsa, like dancing and photography. And then I ended up in a career in videography. And I was a very, very curious person, but in hindsight, I was actually searching for those type of experiences again. And I didn't know that initially. In my 30s, I finally came across Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, sure.
I ended up in bookstores, and I don't read books, but I ended up in bookstores looking for something without knowing what I was looking for. And I come across Eckhart Tolle, and there was a story of his awakening.
Right.
I'm not sure if you're aware.
Do you remember
of the
which
story.
book? Like, there's the New Earth and.
The Power of Now.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
What drew me to it wasn't the book that drew me to him. It was like the story of how he woke up, which simplistically he was quite depressed, you know, quite in a bad place. And his mantra in his head was, "I can no longer live with myself. I can no longer live with myself." And one night, when must have gotten to the most intense part, he suddenly had an epiphany or realization. There's two entities here: the I that can no longer live with the self.
Right.
So I guess he must have seen the ego in that respect.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience as a child where I could actually see the thinking mind, the ego.
Yeah.
So there was a separation. So then I realized this person talks that language. He talks in that way that I was experiencing as a child. So finally I had someone wow, this is what resonates with me very deeply, you know.
Right.
So I started reading Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. Stillness Speaks was the next book that I read by Eckhart Tolle. So I guess this is where my venture into meditation started again. And I would get a lot of insights out of reading these books. And then I would end up back into my natural contemplative part, which is what I was as a child. So I get lots and lots of insights and beautiful understandings. But this is to marry up with TRE. I was not a yogi. I was not into body work at all. I was just into these insights. That's all I knew. And I was not interested in the body, to be honest. Yeah. So very different to a yogi, you know, who's interested in the body and wants to explore that. However, through this meditation, it led me to the body. So my basic meditation was, you know, self-inquiry, contemplation, and then awareness, basic awareness of my external environment. But then I took that into the internal environment. And that's where things, I think, started to shift. So becoming aware of the thoughts and emotions inside the body, but also the natural flow of the breath and the natural movement of the body as well. So maybe 12 years ago, roughly, I started to experience a natural realignment of the spine, I called it, because I would slouch. And then as soon as I would become present with my own body, my body would actually naturally, like it does now, this is how it wants to realign. And it was not forced and it was not directed. It was just a natural flow that's already there.
Okay.
And one evening, I woke up out of bed in the middle of the night and I couldn't sleep. And I just felt I needed to get out of the bed. I went into the living room. I lay down on the floor, and before I could know anything or do anything, I felt this energy in my feet, or it was heat, like a beautiful sort of heat and energy in my feet. And that traveled into my legs, and from the legs it traveled into the upper body, and that's when the body started shaking. So that was my first experience. Possibly there was another experience which is totally different with shaking, and I can reflect on that. But this experience was crucial, because from this point onwards, every time I would go into meditation, my body would shake. So now the meditation and the shaking was in parallel.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what the shaking was about, so I did some quick research. Not much, just a quick research, and I could not find anything at the time. I remember I asked the Buddhist monk on the street, if she knew anything about it, and she said, "I'm sorry, I can't.
Nope.
I don't know. I can't help you with that."
Right.
And I thought, okay, I can't find any research online, and if the Buddhist monk doesn't know, then nobody knows.
Right.
That's what I thought.
Right. Right.
I was wrong, but that's what I thought. So then basically for the next 7 years, I would shake in private pretty much every single day. So whenever I would meditate, the shakes would come on. I knew that I had a little model of Kundalini, and I'm not a Kundalini person, but this model of Kundalini, which said that sometimes when Kundalini comes through the body, it meets resistance, which is, traumas and tension and fears.
Right.
And it basically tries to loosen up that resistance.
Okay.
And I thought, perhaps this is what's happening for me here. Maybe it is Kundalini, maybe it's not. I was not interested in Kundalini either, but I thought it feels like something like that is happening. So then I did not pay attention to the tremors at all for 7 years. They were just, to me, they were byproduct of being in a meditative state. So I didn't inquire into the tremors. I didn't try to play with them. I didn't investigate them.
You just sort of were kind of neutral towards them. Like you just...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they would get quite intense as well. So my neck, my
This
head,
is in a sitting meditation posture, or what kinds of, like when you would go into, or laying down, or like what kind of a physical posture?
Predominantly lying down, because I never really meditated much sitting up. I would just go and lie down, relax, and then meditation would happen.
I see.
So predominantly lying down, but it could be even while I was walking, because even when I was walking, I would contemplate sometimes. And then there would be something happening in the body. So predominantly lying down, but it was not sort of only when lying down.
Wasn't restricted to that, yeah.
It wasn't restricted to that. And even driving, actually. I would drive and contemplate, and then I would feel something happening in the body. And it's like, okay, whatever, that thing's going on again, and it's okay. Yeah. So I did that for 7 years. I didn't tell anyone because, again, I didn't think, I didn't think anyone would know about it. And I saw this journey as a personal journey, the meditation journey, and whatever was happening. I saw it as a personal thing, and I didn't think to share that with many people because I was aware that a lot of people are resistant to that anyway. So I was very respectful of others, and I thought, this is my journey, and I'll respect that, and then I'll respect everyone else, and I'll keep it at that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
And
then what? Because something must have happened after. I mean, there's another chapter or several chapters since then. So, what's next in the journey?
Well, maybe 7 years later, I was having coffee with Emmeline, who she's a TRE provider in Australia, and she was a friend of mine. I knew her as a counselor and massage therapist, and I knew she was a little bit spiritual as well. And we were just catching up for coffee, and for some reason, I decided to ask her, "Hey, have you heard anything about shaking in meditation?" And Emmeline said, "Well, Gab, that sounds like TRE." So I said, what on earth is TRE? And she explained it to me. And the beautiful thing about TRE, I think, is that the understanding of what this neurogenic tremor is. I think I had a correct understanding, but I didn't really expand on it.
Okay.
When Emmeline explained TRE to me, even though I was comfortable for 7 years with the process, I was even more comfortable now because I thought, wow, this is actually not just me. It's actually a lot of people around the world are doing this. It's a practice that is available to everybody, and it's a practice that it's being utilized. So that actually relaxed me even more into the process. And now, after 7 years of letting it happen on its own. Now I had actually a curiosity towards it. So the beauty of that is that then it can deepen into the practice. You know, I was very proficient with it anyway, but now you can deepen it with it in another angle.
Right.
Because there is another angle.
Right.
And the beauty is that with TRE, I actually now understand what it actually is. The neurogenic tremors are. I understand the benefits of them from so many different perspectives, and I can interact with it in another way. So I'm not now limited to just meditating and tremoring.
Right.
I can now consciously go into the process at will. So that there's a beauty in that. The other beauty is that I can now actually investigate the process. I can be with it and see exactly where it wants to go and how it wants to expand.
Yeah.
So it actually, for me, TRE was like opening up this amazing box again,
Right.
of possibilities, of potentialities. And I really, the moment I saw that, I really appreciated for that. The other benefit that TRE had for me is that by practicing TRE, I would get into a meditative state. So now I had another way into neurogenic tremors for, you know, the benefit of the body, the nervous system, but I had another way into meditation as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I can meditate and get into this natural flow, or I can instigate it and end up in meditation as well.
Right.
So that's just
So
fantastic,
cool.
you know.
Okay. All right. I have like 3 questions coming up all at the same time. I have to figure out which order to ask them. So, well, I guess my first question is, you know, to me, it strikes me as interesting that, you know, during this initial 7-year period, you're becoming quite familiar to tremoring, quite proficient, and quite accepting of it. But then when you came to understand that you weren't alone, there were other people, there was a modality around it, people, you know, other benefits, you know, not related specifically to meditation. So you're kind of your horizons expanded a little bit as to what that phenomenon is. Well, part of me is just thinks, oh, it's cool that you were curious, because in some ways you could have been not that curious. Like, okay, well, other people do this too, I do this, but you were curious, so I find that interesting. But that's not my question. I think my main question here is, when you did come to understand, when you came to learn more about it, you've already alluded to this a little bit, but I'd love to know more about how that changed your practice of it. I mean, it sounds like how did it tangibly start to change your approach once you learned, okay, there's a method people use to start it. There's all the, like, what changed about how you engaged with it in, let's say, the first year or so once you knew that TRE existed?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to Emmeline, because the first session that I had with Emmeline, you know, I decided initially, actually, I was a little bit cautious of TRE, because I had the understanding that for me, this process was happening naturally, without forcing, without pushing, without tinkering, right? So then there's a little bit of a question mark. Why would I instigate this process at will? Because it's happening naturally anyway. Right. And if I do, am I poking something that I'm not supposed to poke?
Sure.
So there was a little bit of doubt, but the curiosity was stronger. So I had a session with Emmeline, and I absolutely fell in love with the process, you know, the first session, because I had been shaking on my own for 7 years, but here with Emmeline, there was a person right next to me that really understood the process, was in line with my way of thinking and understanding and everything. And to have another human being on the same level as you that is actually supporting you, and she's quite intuitive as well, so quite often she would support me at the right time, in the right place, you know, for the right amount, and to sense that there's another human being that gets you in this process, that was really beautiful. And I could relax even deeper into it with another human being, right? The process gave me the way of the method of getting into it myself, but with another human being is just phenomenal. It's just beautiful. And I think that's how we're supposed to live. We're supposed to be deeply connected with each other. And TRE gives us that. So that's one of the beauties of TRE. It gives us the opportunity to be deeply connected with the other person. So when I am facilitating TRE, it's not that I am the TRE facilitator and he is this person that's needy or something like that. This is an opportunity for me to be in a deep relationship with someone else, and that is it. And if I can assist them, fantastic. But it's giving me the opportunity to experience life with another human being on a much deeper level. And that to me is the beauty of it, of facilitating a session.
Yeah.
But to answer how did it actually affect me? Well, straight away I saw the practitioner program and I thought, I got to do that. And I didn't know why. I got to do that for myself because I wanted to deepen in the practice. And I felt that if I do the practitioner program, I'm going to deepen my own practice. So that's how interested and curious I was in it, that I was willing to do the practitioner course. Not thinking that I would become a practitioner, an active practitioner, just simply to embody the process.
Sure.
I loved it so much. So that first experience with Emmeline was very profound. It sparked this curiosity. And of course, as I was doing, I think the practitioner course came up very, very quickly after that. So I kind of dove into it very, very fast. My own personal practice changed from the sense that I was now curious about this process. Before I wasn't curious about it. I just allowed it to happen. But now I was curious. And very quickly I noticed that there are the 5 TRE positions, the 5 basic positions that we tremor in. But my body, I guess I was fairly intuitive now with my body. I could see that my body wanted to go in different directions and do different things, different positions, different postures, and using props. So immediately I kind of expanded very quickly because I was very attentive to it. So it progressed very quickly, much more than the original 5 TRE positions. And I thought, oh my God. And of course it goes into myofascial stretching as well, which I was doing a lot of that. And I have now discovered there's different types of movements as well. There's myofascial stretching, there's the body flow as well. There's pandiculation, as you know.
Right.
I find that there is a pulse as well, and a pulsing that happens. And I ended up doing a lot of mudras, like hand signals and gestures and mudras. And I realized that they all have a slightly different purpose. They come from the same source, but they seem to have, I find shaking itself is predominantly for release. Whereas the stretching is predominantly for an expansion.
Okay.
And I find that the pandiculation for me is predominantly for, it's like an alchemical process. It transforms or transmutes something in the body, right? So it's actually, that's what I sense, that's what I feel when pandiculation happens spontaneously.
Yeah.
So sometimes
just in case anybody listening doesn't, everybody listening definitely knows what tremoring is. I mean, this whole podcast is about tremoring. And so they know what that is. They probably know what myofascial movement is, which is more sort of either body being led into, say, stretches or movements or twists or things of that nature. But why don't you explain pandiculation? Because for some listeners, they may not know exactly what you mean.
I hope I get it right because I've been trying to understand what the word pandiculation is. But in short, the way I understand it is when we wake up in the morning, like we have this initial, it looks like a stretch, but actually it's a squeeze as well. So like we're actually squeezing the muscle. It's not just a stretch, it's a squeezing of the muscle.
Right.
And the squeezing of the muscle, I heard, is really important to get the body ready for action. Because it brings blood flow and everything back into the body so they can actually become active.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, it's really important when we wake up in the morning to do that natural So pandiculation is the contraction or of the muscles. Pretty much like the heart. The heart has this movement, and it's there to pump energy or to pump flow.
Yeah. And
this pandiculation is a similar thing. It's the contracting of the muscles to create life, to create movement.
Yeah.
So that's how I see pandiculation.
No, that's perfect. And one thing that's interesting is actually like pandiculation itself, that term, in terms in the, if you go digging around for, what is physiology, what does know about spontaneous movement in general, and other than like pathological tremoring, like with, Parkinson's or neurodegenerative things, pandiculation is often the one that's most recognized and studied, as a spontaneous movement, like in animals and things like that. So, yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting. I'm enjoying these distinctions you're making between that. Shaking tends to be, in your experience, it's about release. What was it that the myofascial movement feels more like expansion of something,
yeah.
And then the pandiculation you feel is some kind of alchemical process. This is very. I'm enjoying hearing your description of your experience like this. So keep going.
Yes, well, this is more recent understanding that I'm coming across, and you know that there's also contraction. So when we
Sure.
are involved, but the contraction is actually, we could say, a negative contraction or a fearful contraction. So sometimes what I've noticed that if I look at the contraction in my body, and then I bring pandiculation to the formula, and then wonder if this contraction could be pandiculation itself, it seems to move into that. And that's when I realized that, okay, this is potentially the alchemical process, turning the contraction into something beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's another way of seeing the contraction literally within your body.
Yeah.
So I used to look at my contractions and see if I can relax into them. But now I also ask the question, is there a pandiculation happening here within the contraction? And then the contraction changes. It transforms from contraction to pandiculation, which contraction is a painful process, whereas pandiculation is a beautiful sort of feeling. So I feel the pandiculation, it is a nice, yes, this feels good. This feels great to actually,
satisfying in a way.
It's satisfying, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's where I feel that this pandiculation, for me at least, that's how it seems to manifest. I'm not sure about the pulsing. A lot of times my arm does pulsing, or the limbs do pulsing. The body can do it as well. I haven't worked out what that is, but the other movements, the mudras, I feel that they actually don't really have anything to do with the physical body or the nervous system. It's beyond. It's almost like a creative expression for no particular reason, but it's just beautiful in just the capacity to have that, to be able to create or to be creative.
Right.
There is a reason, because that creativity is a joyfulness, and there's a beauty, and it's a letting go of everything. But I think it's kind of going beyond the physical body and the nervous system into something other than that. Yeah.
Very cool. I'm curious, in this period when you became curious, you joined the training, you did your you continued your exploring that way. Some of your story. And I'm supposing that Richmond Heath was probably involved in your training, just as one of the early people in Australia. And I don't know how open he is about his background when he's in his teaching mode, but I know from my conversations with him and podcast interviews and things, at least some parallels to your story, where actually I believe for him it was during a Vipassana retreat that with a tremendous amount of spontaneous movement was coming up. And I think similarly, sort of like when you asked the Buddhist monk on the street if she could help, and she didn't know too much about it, I think he was a little bit, if memory serves, he also didn't get a ton of sort of support around this, although, once you start looking around, there are definitely other meditators who get tremoring and spontaneous movement. So, I know, that there's more of them. But so I'm just curious, like, if you did any comparing of notes with Richmond in that early phase of your learning about tremoring, or not particularly, or...
No, actually, I didn't. I think in the training, I was very focused on the teaching, and I didn't. He may have mentioned stuff, but it obviously didn't stick with me if he had mentioned that.
Okay.
But I have heard recently, that he had come across this process through Vipassana, and
Right.
I have had a few people come to me who are meditators, and they move or shake in meditation, and they don't know what that is. And usually they try and suppress it, because most people who meditate like that, the understanding is that you have to be still.
Right.
And then if there is movement, well, that movement is not stillness, and then they try to to correct that. But in correcting that, then they are no longer still. So I think one of the there was a yoga teacher somewhere, and I think they said to be still means to not move a muscle in your body. But if a muscle in your body moves, do not hold it back, because then you're no longer still.
Yeah.
And I think some meditators don't understand the other part. Sometimes the muscle moves on its own. Don't hold it back, because if you're holding back, you're no longer still, because now you're engaged in holding it back.
Right. Yeah.
And that's one of the understandings I think that is missing for some meditators. They really feel I have to be perfectly still. But,
Sure.
in this dimension, nothing is still. Even a rock moves. When we look at a rock under the microscope, there's movement there. So life itself here is based on movement. And where we have contraction, which is fear, that is a reduction of life or reduction of movement.
Right.
And what we really want to do is we want to bring movement, natural movement, back to that. But from a non-forceful way, just a natural way.
Right.
Yeah.
So another question. So you mentioned that the other cool thing that you found about, once you knew TRE, was that it was sort of another pathway into a meditation state for you, which I get that from my own background as well. But I'm curious for you, maybe you could describe that a little bit, because here's this. To make my question slightly more specific, what I'm wondering is for you, when you learned to not just let tremoring arise on its own, but to consciously begin it, sort of through the TRE framework and get it going, so to speak. My curiosity for you, when you made the connection that, hey, this leads me to the state of meditation, my question is, in your experience, does that arise sort of right away, or it grows, or it comes in, it's in the spaces in between tremoring, or it's when you stop tremoring that you find yourself more in a meditative state, or all of those things? Maybe my question is difficult to answer, but that's what I'm curious about, is sort of what you can say about how TRE leads you to the state of meditation.
Think TRE in that respect is the playfulness state of meditation, right? Because we can be totally still and nothing's happening, but that's not the end. I think that's not the end goal in meditation. Yes, there is a stillness, but once we stay in that stillness, there is a playfulness, a beautiful and natural expression, and I feel that TRE provides me with that. It provides me the playfulness state of meditation. It's not always about being still and not moving and getting insights, but actually being involved in the world. So taking that meditative state, and how would you take them? How would the meditative state look like in the world? So from a couple of my insights, it's a playfulness, because you're not clinging to anything, and you're totally giving of yourself, and it ends up being a playfulness or a celebration of the physical body and the joy and the energy that is there. So it's not meditation necessarily being still, but then in the end, if you practice, TRE for 30 minutes or an hour, whatever it is, you may end up to the still point as well naturally. But even as you're in the tremor process, there is a meditation state, because there's an awareness and of what's going in the body. And it's beautiful. It's joyful, and it's pleasant, and it's creative. So I guess I don't look at it so much from a trauma perspective.
Right.
I look at more from, okay, this is fun, and and I don't often attempt to tremor. It's more like the tremor says, hey, let's do it. So it's more like, this is what feels natural. It's like responding to what comes natural within myself. Yeah,
cool.
I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does.
Not what you thought, but very creative, very explorative process.
So then I'm curious, because now it's been, I don't know what year you went through your training, 5 years ago or something, or ish, something like that. Yeah. So you weren't new to tremoring to begin with, and you're definitely not new to TRE now. So how do you use it now? Is it back before you learned TRE, you tremored almost any day, every day, every way, because it came in naturally in connection to your meditation practice. Now you've also learned a lot about TRE. You facilitate with others. How do you currently work with it? What is it? Sometimes just coming up organically, like it used to be? Are you sometimes doing more of a intentional practice? What's tremoring like for you at this day and age?
It's a process that is constantly evolving, and there is a beautiful practice out there called Continuum. I'm not sure if you've heard of
I'm
Continuum.
familiar with that. Very cool work. Yeah.
I love Continuum as well, but I love the word continuum because it says continuum. It's a continuous process. So what I have worked out over the years is that this process, not just tremoring, but the stretching and the pandiculation, is available to us continuously. So if the moment we stop thinking about, practical, logical things, it's there all the time, but the moment we even a little bit stop, the process is there. So as I'm walking, for example, I could be walking in a shopping center or I could be walking on the street. I am instantly aware of my body and how my body actually wants to move. So does it want to pandiculate this way? Does it want to stretch that way? Does it want to walk differently? My foot might want to do something different. Is there a shake as well? It could be in the neck, it could be in the face, it could be anywhere. So for me at the moment, this process is growing and growing and growing in all aspects of life. I'm standing and talking to somebody and I'll be shaking and tremoring, or just, because I'm relaxed. And it's a beautiful place. I'm waiting at the bus stop or in line at the supermarket, my body will actually shake and tremor. And it's not because I'm necessarily tense, but because it feels at home. It feels at home to be like that. It's not like I'm doing it because there's a problem here. It's more I'm doing it because this is what feels right.
Yeah.
On the bus, it's amazing. On the train, it's amazing. While I'm driving, it's happening. Even while jogging, this process is there for me. And it's actually training me how to jog properly and how to walk properly sometimes. So these spontaneous movements are actually, I see them, they are already part of that potentiality for us. And it's really the human being that it's learning from the body, how it actually moves. The body already has all the movements available. Right. And it's really the thinking mind that actually is learning from what the body is capable of. So for me now, it's a process of, hey, body, teach me how do I walk properly? Or how I swim, actually. I went swimming the other day and my back, I'm not a swimmer, but I know that in the past when I did laps, my back would be pretty much straight. My spine would be straight and my arms would move and my legs would move. But the spine would be predominantly straight. Right. And now my spine is doing this naturally. Yeah. And it's showing me, and even the kicks in the feet are different because if you actually pay attention, the body knows what to do. It knows how to operate in that space. It already has that capacity or that potential available. And if we listen to it, it actually shows us the best way. Also the best way for the individual at that point in time. Because if they have traumas or they have contractions or injuries, the body will actually work with that. So you can't do your full range of movement, but it will show you what's the best range of movement for you today. Yeah. So if you listen into that, even if you're injured, the body will actually respond. So it's affecting it's integrating in all aspects of my life, Alex. Okay. It's while I'm sitting down, while I'm reading a book, if I'm watching TV, there's always the potential for that shaking or autogenic movement to happen.
Yeah. Have the people who are close to you, your friends and loved ones, like have they gotten? Because my feeling is that you used to be kind of private with your shaking, and now you let the autogenic movement find you when in all kinds of situations, which is beautiful. But I'm wondering do you ever have to explain yourself, or do your friends and loved ones know this about you? So how has that developed over time?
A lot of people are resistant, still to it. And even my wife, she used to, even in the first 7 years when I would shake, she used to sometimes catch me out shaking, but she never said anything. She never questioned what I was doing, and my neck could be going off like crazy.
Right.
So she doesn't have a natural interest in it. And she can up-taught her TRE, so she can easily tremor.
Sure.
My kids have learned TRE. My mother has learned it. Other people in the family have learned it, but they don't take to it like I do. I mean, I was really invested in it. I was really curious, and I'm finding that a lot of people don't have that curiosity and that passion for it. And it's still odd to people because their body moves in a way that they don't actually, command.
Yeah.
So I think as much as, even being a TRE practitioner and having all this knowledge and understanding and talking to people, even people in my family still really cautious and resistant to it.
Well,
My kids are more open.
Oh, that's cool. Well,
So
you mentioned, but when we were talking before we recorded with your two parents, that both of them recognized that they knew about this to some extent. There was that it wasn't totally unfamiliar to them. I mean, perhaps you don't want to say anything about your parents here, but
no, I can.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, actually, because, yes, as I mentioned to you before, my mother was one of my volunteers when I was practicing TRE. And
Right.
after the first session, she said, look, my body's been trying to do this for years. And for her, it was in the neck and shoulders, It wanted to move. And she thought she had Parkinson's. So she would consciously contract against the tremor. So you can imagine that the body is stressed, wants to release. So that's a big energy, a big force that wants to come out of the body. And then the person is holding it back. So then there's that jarring effect, She would hold against the tremors, out of fear of Parkinson's. But I wonder, at some point, if that's how Parkinson actually comes up. The body is naturally trying to release stress. The individual is holding it back to the point where perhaps, it does some jarring process where it stays stuck in that. So I wonder. And my father, who witnessed the first TRE session with my mom, then piped up and said, my body does that as well. And I thought, what? Your body I've been doing it for 7 years in secret, and your body does it. And, we don't talk about this stuff. And for the listeners, my father sometimes says vertigo. And as far as I understand, vertigo is stress related. The more stress in your life, the vertigo kind of intensifies. And when I question him, in his case, when the vertigo gets really intense, he can no longer handle it. He actually has to lie down in bed. So literally vertigo puts him on his backside. And then when he's in bed, to me, then he's in a state of surrender because he's given up. He can no longer tolerate. There's nothing else he can do. So technically, to me, his mind surrenders. And in that moment of surrender, his body now has the opportunity to do what it needs to do, which is to shake off that stress. And then he says he shakes in bed, and then the vertigo goes away or considerably dissipates, and then he's fine.
Amazing.
He's not interested in TRE.
I was going to say, but he hasn't, despite all of that, he didn't want to learn this from you.
That's right.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these are the challenges that I have come across. Before it was secret, now it's not secret for me. But people are kind of like, no, even though they do it, they don't want to know about it. And it's
right.
I was in a courthouse like a year ago with a client. I did a bit of mental health support work. I took a client to the courthouse, and 3/4 of the courthouse was shaking. Legs, arms, everything. They're sitting there in the room waiting to have their hearing or whatever it is. And I'm sitting there watching these people, most of them, 3/4 at least were shaking. And
Wow.
I can recognize that. I see it straight away. And,
Sure.
So then what do? I think, well, I'm at home here. So I let go as well. I was standing up and I was letting myself shake. And, I was having a good time thinking, nobody's going to judge me here because they're all doing it. They probably think I'm stressed out, but I was actually relaxed and enjoying myself. I think this is perfect.
Right.
So
Interesting.
TRE practitioners out there, if you want to shake in public, go to a courthouse.
Go to a courthouse.
You'll blend in. You'll be like, fine.
One of the crowd. That's great. I wonder if you could share about your practice, because you mentioned you wanted to learn, and so you went through the practitioner training, not necessarily thinking you would end up doing a lot of facilitation or any or whatever. But I think that's changed. I think you do a lot of facilitation. Maybe you could share what created that pivot for you, and Maybe share a little bit about who you enjoy working with. Who do you support? What have you learned by being a supporter for others, different than what you've learned through your own individual practice?
Yes, so I signed up to the TRE course, practitioner course, and I did a weekend, retreat, and that was fine. And then it didn't dawn on me that from now on, it's pretty much practical. So the TRE course is very practical. Mm-hmm. And on my first session with somebody, it struck me that I actually have nothing to offer here. I am not a psychologist, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a physiotherapist or anything like that. Mm. And here's a person in front of me potentially going and releasing some of their traumas, and if something happens for them, what do I do? Because I've got nothing, I'm not But fortunately for me, I think that's when intuition started to come in, or presence, because I was a meditator. So the idea was to be present with the person in front of you, come from a place of not knowing and not judging and not labeling, but come from a place of not knowing. And then I noticed that I started sensing within myself what the other person was going through. So if their chest was contracting, my chest was contracting, or if there was a pain in their ear, I would feel the pain in my ear. And that kind of, so that's where my intuition started to really come in. And so I could point to that person, okay, relax your chest, not because of the visual cues. So in TRE, we learn visual cues, but because of the sensing of the other person. There was one individual who actually disassociated in the practice, and I disassociated. I started thinking about other things. And that's when I realized, I was picking up the disassociation from them.
Sure.
So then I became a lot more present. What's going on in my body? Because what's going on in my body is going on in the person in front of me as well.
Yeah.
And then how do I respond to that? Well, I can bring them back, say, hey, come back, put your legs down. Where are you right now? So I can give visual instruction, a verbal instruction. I might give some physical instruction, crunch or do whatever. But intuitive touch started to come in more and more. And so I thought, okay, if I felt the pain in someone's shoulder, okay, I would touch the shoulder, and then the shoulder would release, relax. And I became aware not to do that in the first couple of sessions for a person, so that they can really integrate with the process.
Kind of connect to themselves.
Connect with that, and to understand that this is their own process, not mine. It's not Gabriel that's doing this. But more and more that intuition started to grow, and then people... I had the fortune of working with, in the early days, with a couple of Reiki masters, and they said to me, well, you're doing Reiki on me, Gabriel, right now. So I didn't know. I was Reiki trained, but I had not utilized Reiki for about 8 years, and people were saying, you're doing Reiki on me right now. And I thought, really? And then because of that, I actually went and completed my Reiki 2 and Reiki 3 course to honor the process and to have that capacity there if it's needed. So becoming a facilitator in TRE actually opened up my intuition. And then what really struck me is that TRE is so simple but so powerful. It pretty much worked for every single person that I was practicing with. And I wasn't very competent in the beginning, and it was still working. So I thought, this is magic, like a process like this, even with someone like me who's in the early days, and it still works for every individual. It's such a phenomenal, what Dr. David Baselli has done is phenomenal. It's so effective, I think. And that gave me courage to work with the process. And the intuitive aspect also kind of said to me, this is where you're meant to be. So this feels like home, facilitating TRE sessions, and being intuitive, being present, allowing Reiki to flow. This is your home, Gabriel, with another human being. So it kind of showed me the way, rather, and it said, this is where you are. And a similar thing happened with group sessions. When we had to do group sessions, I was not really interested in group sessions because I was having fun one-on-one, and I thought, I'm never going to have that much fun in a group session. But then I realized the group sessions, there's a beauty in the group sessions as well. And I started incorporating, instead of the leading exercises, I started incorporating salsa, for example, as a warm-up. Because I noticed I was a salsa dancer in the past, and what struck me actually after learning TRE and all this somatic work, I would go to a salsa place, and I noticed that the dancers who were like the good dancers, who are natural dancers, you notice them moving their shoulders, and you think, this is what we need to do in TRE as well. The shoulders need to open up.
Right.
And then they would, like, if they dance properly, like their diaphragm would actually move. And you think, this is perfect for TRE.
Yeah.
And then you look at their hips, and the ones who are doing well, it's like, oh, their hips are very loose and relaxed. And if we incorporate a little bit of this as a warm-up, then when we go to tremor, those parts of the body are already a little bit more loose, and the music actually is beautiful, because salsa is a very rich kind of music and engaging, and it instigates something else in us. So then when we tremor, we don't have to tremor from a place of trauma. We can tremor from a place of fun and excitement and freedom and expression.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting an amazing idea. I'm going to put you on the spot right now because in our neurogenic integration community, we do workshops and things, and part of the whole theme of, I would say in a nutshell version of the neurogenic integration community that we've developed is it's mostly it's people who already know tremoring. I mean, people can learn tremoring if they come through. We have that kind of content, but primarily it's a group of people who have been tremoring for a long time, and a large focus for the workshops that we do is around integrations. And so it's looking at doing qigong and tremoring, doing music and tremoring, breath work and tremoring. I do a lot of Feldenkrais movement work and tremoring. Anyway, so what I have never done myself and I want to do is I want to experience salsa dancing as a warm up, or or in connection or combination with tremoring. So now, this is where I'm going to put you on the spot. I wonder if you might consider leading a group like this for our program. You don't have to answer right now, but if you choose to, we would love to. I'd love to see that in action. So anyway, keep going.
No, I would definitely consider that. I ended up doing group sessions. And,
okay.
Currently, I'm not doing a lot, but I experimented, with these things. Even with a singing bowl, ringing a singing bowl in the beginning of the session. So that was the warm-up. No physical warm-up. Just
sure.
I learned this from Eckhart Tolle, a technique where you ring a bell or a singing bowl, and you listen to the sound of the singing bowl until it fades. And the more you have to listen to it, the more presence is required of you. As the sound fades, more and more presence is required of you. And when the sound finally fades, what you're left with is presence. So I was ringing that for 3 times before a session and getting people to follow the sound and become deeper and deeper, more present. And then we actually shook from that perspective. And people found that really valuable because, again, it was a different entry point. They were coming into the shaking process from a very present and still sort of aspect.
Yeah.
But yes, salsa, or it doesn't have to be salsa, but any music that is engaging and gets you moving. So we can start up with salsa as a warm-up, and then we can play salsa while people are shaking, because the music is very rich and it can travel through your body, and then you can feel how that music impacts your body. What does it evoke in your body? It's not always trauma, it can be joy. And then anything that is against that joy is going to shake off, basically. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It would be fun. It would be fun, Alex, to do a bit of salsa.
All right. Good. We can do, all of the above. Well, I guess that leads me to another question, which is, what have you learned as you've, what have you learned from other practitioners, or even one of the ways I connected to you is through Dr. Keith Moats, who also came to tremoring not through TRE, but through his own process, and he has a community and where he teaches about therapeutic tremoring through the shaking medicine community. I just interviewed him a few weeks ago, and he's going to be doing a workshop for us next week or 2 weeks from now, something like that. But so I know you've been interviewed by him. But yeah, so who have you connected with in ways that have been useful for your own learning, or made you feel that you're part of a community of explorers, tremorers? I'm just curious. Yeah.
Definitely Dr. Keith Moats, because what I found initially when I started practicing TRE, that I would evolve from the initial 5 positions.
Yeah.
And then when I looked at Dr. Keith Motes, I thought, oh, wow, yeah, he's doing that because he's using yoga positions and Qigong positions. And I also know that in shaking medicine, they use music a fair bit to start off as the warm-up. And you voluntarily shake initially to the music, and then eventually you let go. So I saw that Dr. Keith Motes was utilizing music as part of the process, and that really appealed to me as well, and it felt natural because I was doing that as well.
Yeah, I see.
So it was fantastic to see that someone else was actually incorporating the tremors in different ways. I've also come across a group of shakers, which is Ratu Bagus. Have you heard of Ratu Bagus? He was like a spiritual person, I think, in Bali, and he has a retreat in Bali there. I think Dr. Keith Motes sometimes goes to that retreat. Okay. And he would shake. I cannot remember the name of it, but it's something meditation, some type of meditation he calls it, but it's literally shaking. Mm-hmm. And they shake for 1.5 hours, 3 times a day. Wow. That's part of the shaking, and it's really encouraging people to let go and to shake and to do all sorts of things. So I have discovered a group here in Brisbane that does a bit of that, and I love it because I facilitate a lot. But to be in a situation where I don't facilitate and I'm part of a group session is really invaluable, and it's really fun. So I think we really need these group sessions around the world so that people can get involved and participate, and it's so much fun, and it provides for that creativity as well, because different people will bring different things to the table, to the circle. So shaking medicine for sure, Ratu Bagus shaking. I haven't gotten much into the Japanese form, Seitai Katsugen Undo, but even watching the person move and shake is inspirational, and my body can kind of look at it and resonate, and then it can almost go with the same kind of flow, because I think there's a recognition when we shake, when we get into these autogenic movements, there's really a recognition of our true nature and the non contracted true nature. So it feels, I think, it feels natural. Oh wow! If Alex moves that way, maybe my body resonates with that, and then it wants to move that way because Alex is showing me another potentiality. So it's not about copying you, of course, and forcing myself to move like you, because that doesn't work. But it's just recognizing your own movement. And does that apply to me as well? So I think it's beautiful that there are all these practices around the world. The Seitai Katsugen Undo, shaking medicine, TRE, Ratu Bagus. Then there is the shamanic people in Africa. And I think it's part of the fabric of reality. This vibration, this movement is not. It's the fabric. So then it's bound to come up a lot, and it's bound to come up in lots of ways. It's not restricted to this or that. It's very much of the fabric, which so it's there for us. I actually experienced shaking also in an anxiety attack. So it was there for me then. I wasn't shaking. This is maybe 12 years ago either, before I had the shaking practice at all. But it was there for me then as well, like it was for my parents, in their time of need. So it's very much part of the fabric, and it intercalates into everything.
Amazing. Totally amazing. It's sort of a never-endingly fascinating in my experience. Maybe one more question, curiosity from me, and then and then we'll see if there's anything still alive for you in this conversation. It's about the Reiki, the integration of Reiki, because I always find it so fascinating when part of my work as a TRE person, but also I do some one of the additional things I do is I teach tremoring, so I train people in TRE, yes, but I also increasingly train body workers about tremoring, and so they don't become TRE certified people, but I work with body workers, and I say, you already know about tremoring, I bet, because I bet you see it sometimes, and then also I don't need to actually do that much to show you how to work with it. I just need to show you that we can start it, and I need to show you that you, as a body worker, you have lots of tools to support and be connected to this person's tremoring experience. So this is like one of the activities that I do, and so it's made me very interested in how different touch modalities. Some massages doing deep tissue work. Some massage is hands-on. It's what I call listening touch, listening to the body. Some massage or maybe more energy work is either hands-on or hands-off, but what the practitioner is attending to is something different. There may be their lens may be attuning to energetic flow, and I actually haven't. I love Reiki. I've received it. I myself haven't actually trained in it. I've trained in other energy medicine work, but I haven't done formal Reiki training. But I've received it, and it's awesome. But I've never actually interviewed in detail a TRE person about how it is that Reiki, what happens when Reiki connects to somebody tremoring. And so I wonder if you could just share a little bit from your experience of integrating Reiki. And I liked how you shared, you might not do that in the beginning, so you want people to be clear about what their tremoring is, but then as time goes on, you can offer this as a type of additional support. I would love to hear how you experience and describe this.
Well, I think with all practitioners, all body workers, if we come from a regulated nervous system, so even before Reiki, right? But our nervous system is more regulated, it's more calm, more clear. So when another body comes into that field, they can sense that. They can sense, it's safe to be with Gabriel here. It's safe to be with Alex. They consciously don't know that, but their body understands that it feels safe to be with Alex. And then as soon as they feel safe, they might actually immediately start releasing.
Right.
So I've heard of different practitioners, even kinesiologists. There's a kinesiologist, obviously has done a lot of work on themselves. Like these are people that firstly do work on themselves, right? So their nervous system is much more regulated. And then a client comes in, the client's system picks that up and says, I'm safe and I'm going to let go. Because the first principle of TRE is safety, right? We can only tremor when we feel safe to do so. So in the presence of a practitioner or of a body worker, there's safety, there's felt safety. So then the person might start releasing straight away. And I've heard that many times. I actually did sessions with a kinesiologist because she wanted to show all the other kinesiologists that this happens, because it happened for her a lot. And she didn't understand why. So she came to the TRE session. In Reiki, the individual has to be clear, because as a Reiki practitioner, you are actually a vessel for the energy to come through you and to the other person. So you have to be present, you have to be clear, you have to be humble in that space, so you're not egoic. So that in itself is a good thing. It's very relaxing for the other person. And then the energy flows through, and the energy is according to the client's needs, their needs according to their higher good. So it's never what Gabriel thinks the other person needs, because then I would interfere with that. So then I have to remain, again, I have to be present, I have to be alert, because the energy is coming through, and I have to direct it where it's telling me to go. So it might go to someone's head, someone's shoulders. So I work very intuitively like that. And then there's a direct communication with that person. That person has not verbally said anything to me, yet I'm touching a part of their body that really needs it, and there's a recognition there. Wow, this Reiki is going exactly where I need it, or maybe I didn't even know I needed it here, but now that Gabriel's hands are there, oh wow, that feels good. So it creates that sense of, I think through Reiki, it creates that sense of safety as well, and then the individual can release as well. If the individual doesn't know TRE, they may be resistant to that because they don't understand the process of shaking. So quite often, if I'm doing TRE if I'm doing Reiki on somebody who hasn't done TRE before, I can actually feel their body wanting to move, wanting to shake, or wanting to unfold. And I am now at the point where I used to see it in my mind's eye, but now I can see it on their body. I can actually see how the body actually wants to move. maybe I'm seeing the energy body or somehow, but I'm seeing the direction that the body wants to flow and wants to go in. So then I may suggest to the person, I feel your spine moving left and right here or there. If it's natural for you, let it happen. So I try to coach them through that. Reiki's coming through, but what I'm noticing is that they're not letting go. So quite often people can remain stiff while they're receiving Reiki because they're not open to that movement, to that flow.
Right.
So I think TRE and Reiki go together so well. And
Yep.
I have one or two clients that come and see me for Reiki, but they do TRE. So on the table, they shake pretty much the whole time. So they don't need a TRE session with me because their body's already doing
Yeah,
that.
they know what to do with it. Yeah, yeah.
They can let go. So it's a multimodality, a multimodality approach, TRE and Reiki together.
Yeah.
So Reiki is providing the individual with an energy of some sort, something that they need. It could be insight, it could be warmth, it could be something loving or compassionate. But then their body needs to do something with it as well. It's part of the integration, right? So TRE is the neurogenic tremor is a part of integrating the healing that you are receiving. So that's why I find that the two are amazing together. And there's no one modality that kind of does everything. It's more like, I'm even into massage. So I know you spoke with Dr. Keith Motes about Zentai Shiatsu. So
Right.
a lot of the movements sometimes that I do with a person, I just feel, okay, they're shaking, they're tremoring, but I feel like I need to do this to the person, stretch their leg or do a little bit of massage. And I'm not a massage person. I'm not
Right.
but it naturally comes through. And very much it's really what does the person need at this point in time while they're in front of me? Do they need silence? Do they need a certain word? Do they need Reiki? I do light language as well. So sometimes it's light language that can come through. So then I'll tell the person, are you okay with some light language? It seems to be coming through right now. And
I don't know what that means. So so describe can you if I was your client and you said, are you okay with light language right now? I wouldn't know what you were going to do or say or yeah.
So you might ask that. And light language is the way I understood light language initially is speaking in tongues.
Okay.
Sometimes
Okay.
people speak in tongues, but I actually did a light language course and I realized that light language is speaking in tongues. It's also can be humming,
Okay.
can be written. So sometimes people light language is actually written symbols,
I see.
and they don't seem to make any sense, but there is something behind that.
Right.
And sometimes light language is actually just physical, like movements.
Okay.
Right. And there's an energy that's similar to Reiki. It's an energy that sort of comes through and it does its own thing. So
I see. Interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if someone's in front of me, like it might be, oh, Alex, it feels like you need light language here. Are you okay with that? Or Reiki. But sometimes it happens, spontaneously, like Reiki. I don't even know I'm doing it, and people say, yeah, I can feel the heat in your arms, and you're doing something. Yeah.
Cool.
But I am basically open to the person's system, and I kind of feel that the more variety I have, the better for the person, because sometimes you need to stand back. Okay, like let the person do their own thing. But if I am here, what is it that I have to provide? What is it the person needs?
Right. Cool.
So it's being open to that. But I feel that a person who knows TRE is much more open to receiving the other modalities. So it's a really critical point. So even massage, if you do TRE and someone's massaging you and you feel that your body wants to release and move, let it on the massage table, because it means a massage and your body's now working in unison and doing their thing.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly how I came to this through as a bodywork person, and this was exactly the conversation I had with Emmeline, which was that we said, boy, if you're a body worker, it is very much in your best interest to get your people, teach them TRE and get them tremoring, because the people that you're working with are way less likely to just be like a pile of bricks or concrete. Like people, their bodies know what to do. They know their muscles know how to relax. They know how to allow reorganization to occur. And the experience of doing massage or body work on somebody, a system that knows spontaneous movement and tremoring versus a system that doesn't know it yet, it's a night and day kind of an experience. So I very much resonate with what you're sharing.
And even after the session. So during the session, you can allow your body to respond. But I find if I get, some sort of chiropractic adjustment done or any even kinesiology afterwards, I'll go home and my body actually wants to explore the new possibilities, because the practitioner has opened something in myself through massage or through Reiki or whatever it is. And now it's part of the integration process. The shaking is there not only for releasing trauma, but for integrating the new body. So it's phenomenal as a practice after receiving healing.
Wonderful. Wow, so cool. All right. So if somebody listening wanted to know more, wanted to find you either as maybe a client or the groups that you do, what's the best? I mean, of course, I'll get all of your information and put it into the show notes and this and that. But yeah, how can people find you?
Well, I have a website, and the website is gabrielkaszab.com. So it's very simple, and they can go there and they can email me there, or they can look at my social media accounts and follow me there if they would like to. Yeah.
Do you do online and in-person work?
I'm actually starting to do a little bit of online work. I prefer in-person, one-on-one or group sessions. But yes, I have started last year doing a couple of online workshops as well. Cool. And that is interesting. It's another expansion.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Gabriel, this has been just a complete pleasure to hear your story and the evolutions and where this has led you. It's really been inspiring to listen to how well you have followed a path that has been completely authentic and organic for you, and you have had the curiosity and the wisdom to just and I think the humility to just keep learning and seeing what's next. So I've learned a lot just hearing your description.
Oh, thank you, Alex. It's been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed this interview, and hopefully people see something in these talks and kind of makes them curious, like it's made me curious to give it a try and to understand that it's not all, serious stuff. It's fun.
It's not all trauma.
It's not all trauma. And there is that component, so we have to respect it. But there is the other side as well, which the same process can give us joy and happiness, creativity and fun.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Well, I'll stop the recording here. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
That's it for today's episode. We hope you found inspiration and new insights into the power of neurogenic tremoring.
If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It really helps us reach more people interested in this transformative work.
And if you want to dive deeper, connect with us. Or to learn more about our sessions, courses, and upcoming trainings, head over to neurogenicintegration.com.